Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Dyer, and I'm a media missionary with New International. And I have an exciting guest with us today. His name is Phil Hudson. He's been with the organization for a while now, and he's got a couple cool perspectives that he's going to give us. So, he's the regional director of Central Asia and Africa, but he's also part of the global risk assessment team who's been helping out with a lot of this COVID experience that all of our missionaries are going through. So, he's going to give us a firsthand perspective of what that's been like and how it's been impacting our missionaries. Phil, it's so awesome to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm pretty good, and thank you for inviting me on.
I'm happy to have you. Now, I haven't really had a lot of time to get to know you very well, but every time I interview a missionary, they mention Phil Hudson, and it's always been very positive. You've been very active in the missionary community for a long time, and so for that reason, I'm so excited to have you. But first off, let's talk about the global impact assessment team. What is that? The risk assessment team? What is that, and how are you guys working through COVID-19?
Okay, well, the mission, like most missions, had a global crisis response team that
Mhm.
activates whenever there's a crisis. Normally, that's one crisis in one place. A missionary gets sick, someone dies, civil unrest. But this global one, it was activated. So after we got going with that, we started meeting 3 times a week, a couple of hours on Zoom. Uh, we divided it down to a crisis management team for this
Mhm.
response. And we've created risk assessment templates, contingency plan templates. All of our affiliates have either filled them out or in the process of getting them filled out,
Right.
and just initiating plans for them uh, in the event that some of these contingencies we thought of happen.
Yeah, and how would you say it's going? I mean, has everyone kind of been at this point? It's been assessed, right?
Yes, I mean, we have it. We update those assessments. The regional directors update the assessments every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So we keep up with what's happening in the countries where they're in. Many of our missionaries, actually, all the ones that I supervise,
Hmm.
except one, are in countries that have no international flights leaving.
Yeah.
So now, if they wanted to leave, they couldn't. But the fact is, none of them wanted to. So I'm in contact with them as part of my job as regional director.
Right.
But the crisis management response team is the one that created the templates, the questionnaires,
Hmm.
and put in place the mission-wide response.
Yeah, and I remember you sharing with me a story. If they wanted to get out, it cost something like $5,000 for a ticket. Like it'd be just the prices would be astronomical if they could have gotten out before the ban of traveling would have been. Uh, what were missionaries thinking about when that ban came? Were they nervous? Were they how did they react?
Well, none of mine wanted to leave, and
Okay.
so they stayed, even though they knew we were closing and other expatriates were leaving.
Hmm.
Um, but then in the one country you're referring to, the flights had already stopped. But
Okay.
the State Department said, hey, there's Americans here that might want to get out, so we'll put together a flight. So instead of that flight costing around $800 to $1,000, which it normally would from that country to the States, it was going to be $5,000 a person. But even at that money and the thought of having to be in quarantine back here in the States, it was more money. That wasn't the issue. Our missionary said, the people I'm working with, I can't leave. I want to
Right.
stay with them right now and try to use safe practices. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much been the stance of all of our people.
And specifically talking about Africa and Central Asia, what's been the response to being now over 5-6 weeks now in COVID? Has everyone kind of adapted to their ministry, or is ministry kind of stalled and halted?
Well, it depends on the country. In
Okay.
Central Asia, they're able to do a lot of things by Zoom and others.
Hmm.
But two ministries I work with both have income producing projects in
Right.
the country that involve training, and they can't do those trainings. So
Yep.
they've had their their involvement with their staff, the discipling involvement can continue. Their
Right.
involvement with some church leaders can continue,
Hmm.
but they're actually at risk in the country, not physically risk, but their work permits are at risk because they have staff that they have to keep paying, and their work permits
Right.
are contingent
Wow.
upon those businesses being operating. Now, when you switch to countries, we have other people where they've been able to pretty much continue their work, just practice social distancing
Okay.
and go ahead with it. So it's really a mixed bag and depends on each particular context.
Can you give a story of someone that's been really impacted then, a specific ministry that's really had to change, maybe even stop their ministry? You mentioned something about teaching ministries. Can you give an example of someone like that?
Yes, in one country, they have a preschool and kindergarten,
Right.
and the target group for that, it's an English stream school, so it's high level in the country, but the target is an unreached people group that bring people to that school.
Hmm.
And so two things have happened during that. One is they have their staff and teachers that they have to legally keep paying in the country, but there's no income because the kids
Wow.
aren't in school. And they're not in contact with their target group. So it was right at a time when they were recruiting for this next semester, and that all ended. And they don't even know whether it's going to be able to open up in the fall again. So, that has stopped a lot. But on the other hand, that same family has been cooking meals and taking them around to people in the target group.
Wow.
And leaving them on their apartment front and texting them and saying meals are in here, just to keep contact up with them.
So they're still ministering even despite all this that's going on. And I love that attitude of just trying to serve and being the hands and feet of Christ. And so I no doubt that that's part of the blood and the missionaries that we have and that are sent out there. So it's exciting. They're still trying to minister to people, and it seems like they are still having some success. What are their options if they can't pay these workers and there's no one going to school? I mean, do they think at some point they'll have to leave, or is it just too soon to tell what their options are?
It's just too soon to tell, but if their business fails, they will have to leave because that's the reason they're able to be in the country.
Wow.
Now, in other places, people can stay. The ministries are just somewhat put on hold.
Yeah.
But they're not dependent upon income from that ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just lost opportunity during this time for ministry, but it's not actually putting their presence in the country at risk.
Okay. Have you been able to hear a story that specifically says, we know we've been impacted by COVID, but here's how we're overcoming? You mentioned, making meals for people, but do you have another story that says from one of the missionaries that have been able to overcome this with a different type of ministry or impact in the community?
I was trying to think. Well, yes, I do know one that was working with some church leaders.
Okay.
And the church leaders don't have access to internet, but they do text. Okay. And so this missionary is regularly putting out, like every other day, text and actually discipling over that. And because of this, some of those people have asked, can they forward those on to other people? So there has been a way to sort of expand that ministry out a little bit, even in situations where they're literally stuck inside their home.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good way to keep on ministering, and that's exciting that people are able to still do that. One of the ministries that you're probably really familiar with is Africa Hope. For people that don't know much about Africa Hope, can you tell us what they do and where they're located?
Yes, Africa Hope is in Kenya, in this town of Narok, which is in Narok County, and it's the central south part of Kenya. The county bumps up against Tanzania and against the Serengeti. The Masai Mara Game Park is there, and the tribal group there is the Maasai. And
Okay.
Africa Hope is a multifaceted ministry that arose out of the AIDS crisis and all the orphans that were there. And it searched back and said, how can we stop the flow of orphans? Because they're just, at that point, they were just coming out. And so it led them back to the remotest villages. And so they're starting a transformative ministry. They have a transformative ministry in villages that involves church planting, involves schools, involves agriculture, clean water, and actually availability of water, and health and nutrition. And those things all go together in a multiplicity of programs, all run from that center at Narok, but in the remotest parts of that county.
Hmm. And speaking of clean water, has that been impacted, that ministry, because of COVID-19? Are people able to maintain that or repair? Maybe it needs to be repaired, or how has that been affected?
Well, we have a major water project going on that is the goal is to provide clean water inside the household, a
Hmm.
unit inside a household
Okay,
to provide clean water for 20,000 households
that's
within
awesome.
10 years. We're in
That's
year three,
okay.
but right now we were doing testing from Penn State University. Someone's helping us from there that's a NI affiliate. And we were doing testing of these filters in the type water they have there, which is somewhat muddy. And we had 40 of these that were going out in a test right when COVID-19 hit.
Oh,
So they've gone out, but we've not been able to follow up out to the villages to do the follow-up tests like we were going to be able to do it. So
okay.
it's impacted, but it's raining in Kenya unseasonably, so people actually have some water. It's not clean, but at least they have some water, which was not the case a year ago.
Right. Um, Sorry, just a quick little thing there that happened. Uh, what would you say the biggest needs are for the ministries out there serving in Africa and Central Asia? Uh, is it financial, or is it a different type of need that you think they need?
Well, if you look at right now during the COVID-19, the poorest people are being impacted the most, like here. Uh, a large portion of people in every one of the countries I work in make their money in the not the black market, but the informal economy.
Okay.
So they grow food or they have some goats, they milk those, they sell those, and that's been shut down. So they have
Wow.
no income. The
Okay.
stores are being shut down, and they have no backup. There's no government system. There's
Wow.
nothing. So I got a text today from one of my people. It was a long one that's circulating there, and it said there's two viruses. There's the coronavirus, and there is hunger virus. And rich people are worried about the coronavirus, and
Right.
they can stay in their homes so that they don't get sick and die from the coronavirus. Poor people are worried about the hunger virus, and it resides in their homes, and they will die if they stay in their homes.
Wow.
So it really is true, actually. I have friends who I'm not working with that I just know from my travels into Kenya all the time. And they're not asking for anything, but they're writing. And when I ask the question, when was the last time you've eaten, or what kind of food do you have for your kids? A surprising number of them say there is no food for the kids. And, or it's been 2 days since we've had anything and we can't go out. The police are beating us if we go out. So we have the means to get food, get money to people like that who can go out, show the police, I'm just going to purchase this food in this
Right.
shop. But they have to have cash.
Yeah.
And their businesses are not operating. The barbers, I have a friend that has gone to the same barber for almost 20 years
Mhm.
in Kenya, in Narok, and he knows the barber, and he's witnessed to him. The guy's a strong Christian.
Yeah.
And there's no money. There hasn't been for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And so this guy was reduced to having to come to my friend to beg. And he's not a beggar. He's worked. He's got his own business, but there's no cushion there. And so he's actually helped him with funds to buy food every couple of weeks, helping him with it, but not forgetting the person who sweeps up the hair,
Right.
who was really on a worse thing. So he said, give this to that person
Yep.
because they're there. So that's the way all of our missionaries are ministering that way. They're
Wow.
helping people like that.
What can we do as a missionary community do to help that? Do we contact you? Do we contact New International? What's the way to help that region out? What can we do?
Well, anybody could contact me, and I could put you in touch with the
Okay.
direct person. But they could also send something, donate to the mission generally rather than to me. But if they donate anything that comes to me that's not from one of my donors, I will put it directly to food relief
Okay.
somewhere outside of the U.S. where people are really hurting.
All right. Right now we have contact your information, your email up, so that will be up there. If you have, or if you want to help the people in these regions in any way, contact Phil P Hudson at newinternational.org, and he can help you out with that. He'll show you the right way to go. You can also go to newinternational.org and then search for Phil Hudson, and that's a great way to communicate with that and just put support. And maybe in the memo line, what should they write?
Either write Phil Hudson or write COVID food.
COVID food, and that'll go directly to help feed people in that area. Phil, I want to thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. It sounds hard. It sounds tough to deal with. Yeah. How are the missionaries coping with watching this? Because they're seeing their people they're trying to serve go hungry, and they're trying to do stuff, but sometimes there's not enough that they can do. Emotionally, how are they doing?
Well, it again, that's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I personally know of 3 couples who have started counseling since this COVID-19 thing, and part of it is in the areas that I minister in and other missionaries that I know, their living space is not as much as ours usually.
Sure.
Now, in some places it is, but some of the people that I work with, they have very small living spaces, and being under order so that you can not go out of your house, as in one country where they were not allowed out, others where they had an hour or 2 a day and you had to have a space to go. That has an emotional toll. And while they're able to be in contact like this on, Zoom, WhatsApp, Messenger Live, and all of those kind of things, the thing that they're there to do, they're not able to do. So that creates stress.
Yep.
And wondering about people back here. Some of them have, aging parents here. Some of them have children and grandchildren back here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there is a number of stress, but overall, people are doing well. They're just like us. They're missing the human contact. And since their work, at least all the missionaries I work with directly work with people every day, that's what's hitting them. But spiritually, I had one tell me just recently, I asked the question, is there anything positive from this? And she said, yes. She said, I'm being able to spend more time directly with the Lord, and I'm having more time to think, and it's not feeling like so much like I've got to get this done. But so she said, I've really moved into a depth, and her and her husband are actually having some Bible studies. They found that they're just doing them together. And so she said, we can say that's a blessing, even though it's a little tedious being stuck in this 3 rooms together all the time.
Yeah. This morning we had a media meeting with the media team at New International, and Josh Walker got to lead it, and he talked about in Psalm about be still and know that I am the Lord. And what a good reminder to be still and know that God is in control. And sometimes we need to clear our head and get closer to the Lord and let the Lord move in these situations, and less of us and more of Him. And that's what your missionaries have just said there. It's just a good reminder that, God's got this. He's in control. And we need to just continue to rely on Him for our strength and wisdom throughout this whole process. Yeah. So, thank you for sharing that. That's about all I got, Phil. Is there anything else you'd like to say to anyone that's watching, the missionaries out there, just a word of encouragement or anything like that?
Well, one thing I'd just like to mention about missionaries for prayer, that in many places, the misinformation about COVID-19 is really great, just like it is here. Tons of conspiracy theories and all of these things.
Yeah.
And those are strong out there. But in several countries, if foreigners go out, people think they brought this. And so it's not so much if you're in a country where you look like the people, you could pass through that, which is like Central Asia. But when you're in a country in Sub-Saharan Africa, for the people who are actually from North America and aren't from Sub-Saharan Africa themselves, they stand out in the small towns and where they're at. And sometimes people are afraid of them. And so that can be really jarring to you, who have always been in a very hospitable culture and been received friendly and everything, and have people step back from you. And some people even say things, you're the reason we're shut down because you brought these things to us.
Wow.
So just praying for people to keep the right attitude and to understand that that's part of the enemy's work, is to spread disinformation and fear
Mhm.
and dissension among people.
All right. Well, thank you, Phil, for joining me. I'm glad that you got to kind of share your side of the story and about the way that you get to interact with our missionaries. You're kind of like the liaison for a lot of people, and that you connect a lot of missionaries to their home church and to their partners, and you're really the communication person that kind of brings it all together. So thank you for doing that, for answering the call so many years ago, starting things like Africa Hope and so many other things that we don't have time to talk about today, but maybe in a future date we can talk more about your history and the way you've really impacted the world for Christ. I'm excited to be on the same team as you, and thank you again for joining me, Phil, and I hope you have a blessed day.
Okay, thank you. God bless you.
God bless. Bye.